can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Charles Wallace. Today's guest is a rancher, and his family's ranch goes back to the 1800s, 6 generations. And his mission is not only to raise great cattle, but he wants to share the truth about the American rancher. So please, without further ado, let's welcome Tucker Brown to the show. Hey, Tucker, how you doing today? Thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Hey, honored to be a part of it, and thanks for asking and being flexible to get a time to work for both of us. But yeah, excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I kind of said this to you before we started. This definitely a little bit outside the norm for me and my comfort zone. But I think when I have looked at some of your content on LinkedIn, I think it translates, and I think you have a lot to offer, and I think the audience is going to get a lot out of this. So that being said, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Tucker Brown. I'm from North Texas. My family's been ranching in Texas since 1895, and we're west of Fort Worth, about 2 hours, in a small town called Throckmorton. And we raise, I would be the 6th generation, and I have 2 little girls that would be the 7th. And our main thing is selling registered cattle, bulls that working on building better genetics that are more efficient, whether it's having a calf that's born easier or an animal that marbles really well, that is really good as a ribeye on the plate. And there are we can get really deep on a lot of that, the things that I really enjoy on that part. But then really I guess it was 2021 that I really felt convicted to start telling the story of the American rancher. And I saw somebody that was a 1st generation rancher really sharing what she was doing in California. And I was like, man, if I get excited about a 1st gen sharing it, and I have this story of family history, being involved for a long time and keeping the ranch in the family and the family in the ranch, and why, that's a great story that people need to hear, and I'm not telling it. So I guess the past 2 years, I've really taken to social media and grown a following. I'm almost 500,000 followers across a couple platforms, and really enjoying sharing the truth of the American rancher and agriculture.
And Tucker, I think that's what actually drew me to you when I saw your content, right? I mean, let's be totally honest. I'm a 52-year-old guy from the city of Philadelphia, right? Not a lot in common, but the one thing that spoke to me was your passion. And I think that's what translates. So that being said, can you share how following your passion has really shaped you personally and professionally?
Yeah, no doubt. I've always had a passion for the ranching industry, just being a part of my family and working with my granddad, working with my dad. I've always loved that. And as I went to school and then I came back to the ranch in 2017, I had always loved media, any kind of media. I always loved watching sports and watching sports broadcasters. And I had started my a sports broadcasting company in college to help pay my way. And that media, I just had an itch that I needed. And obviously I wanted to ranch. And so I was like, why don't I combine the two? And then I can get both the things that I really enjoy doing together. And since then, it's made ranching more fun because I've been able to implement my love for media into that. But I also enjoy connecting with people. I am a people person. I enjoy being around them, whether it's at cattle conventions, whether it's at a NFL football game, whether it's at a New Year's Eve ball drop. I mean, I really enjoy being around people that like to have fun and love on other people. So I get to do all of those things at the same time, and that's really where I've found a lot of joy, not just happiness in the moment, but really joy in what I'm doing. And I think in the public's eye, that's not what they vision when they see a rancher, or they think of corporate farms maybe. And really, the truth is that over 90% of the farms and ranches in the U.S. are family owned or privately owned by people like me that have two girls that he wakes up and feeds in the morning. And my wife teaches at the kindergarten. And I mean, we're just like everybody else. And I'm trying to share that. So, and I hope you can tell I'm having a lot of fun doing that.
Well, it definitely speaks volumes in your content, because I can tell. So you talked about the ranch a little bit, and you mentioned earlier that your family's ranch, 6 generations, goes back into the 1800s. I think it's safe to say ranching, as far as American history, it's definitely what I would say more of a traditional industry, right? So how now have you kind of taken it where you blend the tradition and some of the innovation? And what could some other industries possibly learn from your approach?
That's a good question. I'm really thankful for the family that kind of trained me for what I do. Both of my parents are very large on, I mean, just have trained me that communication is very, very important in anything, whether it's with the relationship, with family, with a loved one, with a friend, or with your coworkers. So I'm very thankful for that. And with recent technology, my family in the ranch also takes that. We do a lot of in vitro fertilization, embryo transfer, artificial insemination. I mean, we're bringing the sound science into ranching, and where tradition meets technology, and can you go one way or the other? Can you be too traditional? Yeah. Can you be too technological and forget the tradition? Yeah. And so we're trying to find that happy mix of what can we use to make us better? And if it's there, why not use it? So as a business, can you be too traditional and not use technology and suffer from that? Yeah. Or can you be too technological and forget the tradition of what got you to the dance? You can. So we're trying to find that mix of that, of using the sound science that works and that can make us better, because you don't have to change, but you do have to compete with those companies that do. And, I see a lot of ag companies specifically, but others as well, that allow tradition to suppress success. And when success is so easy to reach, but you're letting pride or tradition set in the way of that, it's frustrating to watch, because of how easy I find it to mix technology and tradition together. But that's not the way everybody lives, and I understand that. So I'm very thankful for the raising I had of always looking for something to help to make us better, to move forward.
Yeah, and I think what you said there translates again to just not even just industry, Tucker. I think it translates to life, the way we approach our everyday life. So I think that's a really good, link between industry and life. And thanks for that detailed answer. Appreciate that. I know, following you a little bit, you talk about being a community voice and basically being a voice for ranchers. What does being a voice in your community mean to you, and how do you believe that it actually impacts society in general?
Well, for the ag industry, very few people get into agriculture to talk to people. Really, it's more of a getaway from people than it is to talk to people. So I understand that our industry is that way, and I do love part of that I can get away if I need to. But like I said, I'm a people person. I love to communicate. I love to create relationships, and that is, if you don't have that voice, if you don't tell your story, somebody else will. That's the truth. Is that somebody else will tell your story if you don't. And for far too long, agriculture has had somebody else telling their story, and now we have generations, up to 3 generations of people removed from the farm or ranch, and so all they know is what they hear. And with somebody else telling the story of things that may not be true or that are skewed to really one side, I just know, and I think the industry knows now that we have a story to tell and we have to, or it won't be the right one told. So being that voice, I'm very honored to do that. I kind of live for that. I'm like, all right, here's my spot. And anytime we feel like we find our spot in work or in a relationship, you kind of feel your place or where you're needed. And that's really where I feel. And I enjoy that, whether it brings fire to me or not. And the interesting thing about ag industry is that I'm kind of on a fence between, if you go to the opposite ends of the spectrum of the really, really traditional rancher and the vegan that wants to care for the animals, like the very, very, opposite sides. I'm kind of have rocks thrown at me from both sides, which has been really interesting and one that I didn't know would happen. So, I think we have to have that voice for people to realize that. And another thing to think of is that those people may not be a part of agriculture, but they are voting on policies that will really affect agriculture. And if they don't know the whole story, then they can't vote, or it's harder for them to make the right decision on the vote if they don't know the whole story. So I don't necessarily tell people the way to vote, but I just want them to have the whole story of what would happen, what's the consequence of each decision, and from there they can make their own decision.
So you touched on it a little bit there, and I was hoping we would get to this. And it's interesting the way you said it about you're getting the rocks thrown at you from both ends. I always find it interesting, and I've gotten to talk to a lot of people who are in food related industries and services in other countries. Mm-hmm. Tucker, what do you see as far as our country, I'll say, right? Because I hear a lot of, the negative. I hear about, some people look at what you do as a negative, but let me just put it in this regard. What do you hope to accomplish as far as making sure that, the health, the quality of the food, the everything? How do you kind of take on that responsibility?
I eat the product that I raise, and it goes on my table. It feeds my daughters. And so I don't want anything on there that's not safe, that's not healthy, that wouldn't be good for my family or my friends that's eating the same product. And so the good thing about being a voice for agriculture is that I have nothing to hide, because I'm raising the animals. Here's how I raise them. Here's the products that I use or don't use. And for the research I see, and that I have to do a lot of research because it's my job. For the ranch to be going in the right direction, I think research is important. And so in the research that I know, or that the places I trust say, here's the products we can use that are safe for eating, that are safe for the industry, and that are safe for the environment as well. We have to think of that. That's the long run. That we take care of the land that we work on. So that's really where it just goes back to being personal and saying, is this safe? And it's like, it's safe for my family. We've been eating it since 1895. And here are some products maybe we don't use, or that the industry has said no to because we found that it's not healthy for the plate. And so we should want it to be safe. We shouldn't have to hide behind a veil or hide behind a wall and try to tell a lie, because there's no reason to. And so our food should be safe. Ranchers want it to be safe because that means more people want the product. And, some people are more and more worried about where their food comes from, or wants to know where it came from. And, it goes back to that story not being told, that the only thing they've heard is that some products being used are not healthy, but I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I appreciate your answer there. Especially, I like how you talked about not just the animals, even, right? All the different aspects of it, the land, things like that. And I think you come across as extremely authentic in that you're looking to do what's right. And listen, when you're telling me you're feeding it to your family and you're looking to do what's right by your family, that gives me a lot of confidence in what you're doing. It was a good segue though, what you talked about, because obviously there's challenges, right? And you face some negativity in your role. How do you overcome the challenges and the negativity and look to stay positive?
Yeah, great question. I used to have pretty thin skin, especially when I started this social media. I mean, I'm used to working around all my agriculture folks, and everybody's pretty kind to each other and they're shaking hands and helping each other out. But that's not how it is on social media. Um, I always wanted to be liked. I like to be liked by a lot of people, and I think doing the right things build towards that of people trusting you and liking what you do and supporting you. And um, so I had to ask a lot of questions to people who had gotten the flack before. Most of what I've learned is that the flack or the negativity comes from people who are not open-minded and will never change their mind, no matter what you say. And I had an old cowboy tell me, I was replying to a comment online that I was mad at, and he said, "Young man, arguing with a fool proves that there are two." I was like, "Oh, yeah, you're pretty right." And so I've tried to find the places to not necessarily argue, but to have the conversation. If it's an argument, I tend to stay out and it doesn't hurt me at all. But I love to have the conversations, or when people approach me to say, "You use this product and I've heard bad things about it. Why do you use it?" That's really where that's where I want to be. That's the not negativity, but the question or the curiosity is where I really look towards, because those are the folks that are open-minded and are saying, "I've heard this. Is this the truth?" And that's what they're seeking, is the truth. And if you're not seeking the truth, then I'm not going to be the guy to talk to you or spend the time to visit with you.
I love that quote. That's fantastic advice too. The arguing with a fool. I will definitely remember that probably for the rest of my life. That was God, that was fantastic. Thanks for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sitting here with me now. Obviously, we're different. You, the cowboy hat, me, my flat cap, right? But we're part of what I'll call a bigger online community that we can all kind of look to thrive in. So, from your perspective, how do you identify and connect with what you see as maybe your ideal audience online, and why, and you come across this way, why is that community so important to you?
The community I'm trying to reach is not the ag community, because that's my echo chamber. That's the people who will support me whether I'm on social media or not. But they're not the people that need to hear that beef is safe. They already know. They already know that beef is safe. And so I've always tried to find ways of reaching those that I would never have the opportunity to reach. And social media, just like you've seen, has been able to give you the place to reach people that you would never have before. I mean, without Zoom or social media, I don't know if you and I would have ever met. Right. So I do. Authenticity is important to me, because I think people can read right through things that aren't authentic, things that are fake, or whether it's an ad. And I know that people can read right through that. And building the trust back between the rancher and the consumer is one of my goals. And so if I don't be authentic, if I don't care for those people who are following me, that either want to learn something or are seeking the truth or just love the cowboy way of life, I mean, those are the folks that get my message out there. I can post it, but it's really those people sharing it that make the difference. So yeah, that community I'm looking for is one that I haven't met, is one that's typically in the larger cities, and probably not in Texas. I mean, maybe the Dallas or Austin or San Antonio areas, but most of the time I'm trying to reach people outside of that.
That's interesting to me, and I wanted to ask this, and I want to apologize in advance, because this may be a stupid question, but that's never stopped me before, so I want to ask anyway. Have you found in your industry that, since I feel like TV with Yellowstone, all those shows, has that impacted you in a way where it's starting to shine a bigger spotlight on someone like you?
Oh, you took the words right out of my mouth. really I am riding on the coattail of what I call the Yellowstone effect. There's been, I mean, being a cowboy has kind of become cool again in a large fashion. So there are some in our industry that don't like Yellowstone, but really what I've seen is that it's made people more interested in our way of life, and I think that's a good thing. That they know we're real, that they know what we're doing, and are kind of growing a respect for it just by watching the show. And so we do have to be careful because that spotlight is on us and watching us, and it's like, all right, what do you actually do? And we have to, I mean, we need a good first impression. And so far, I think we've done that of representing the Western way of life really well. So I hope you can tell I'm open-minded. It's a thing that I'm always seeking the truth. And I've really enjoyed riding the coattail because it's really done nothing but help me on social media. So I've enjoyed it.
So with that spotlight, right, more responsibility. So how does that social responsibility, what does that mean to you? And how do you give me some examples of how maybe you look to, maybe you're paying a little more attention now, not that you weren't before, but maybe knowing now this spotlight's even greater. What are some of the ways that you may incorporate things into your daily work that you're really thinking about that more?
Yeah, from a lot of research, we found that the beef consumer is very concerned about the way that animals are treated. And the good thing is that a large majority of ranchers are too. Just like in any industry, there are some bad bugs in there, and that's not who represents us. But they typically tend to be the loudest ones. So I'm doing my best, along with trying to encourage others of, hey, look, we need to show that most of us, a very large majority of us, agree with the consumer. The animal should be treated right. It should be treated with respect and should have great, the land should be taken care of. It should be a win-win-win, a win for the consumer, a win for the land, and a win for the cow. It should be that cow should have a good life, good grass, all the help it can get. If it's sick and needs medication, the cowboy should be able to give it, and helping share that of the reason why. I think that really eases people's minds. And if somebody is scared of antibiotics or getting, because I say, hey, I can either let this calf die of pneumonia, I can let it suffocate, or I can give it 3 cc's of an antibiotic and it'll get the pneumonia away. I think we would all agree that we would like to save the calf's life. And whenever you can share that why, that's really what I've looked for more recently with that bigger spotlight. Is like, okay, why do we do this? Because I have to be able to explain it, or otherwise it's not going to look very good.
Yeah, and I think again, just your authenticity, I think it does come across. And I think for people that may have, they're tentative about beef or the industry, I think you are good for the industry because you present it in a light that I think is very open and honest, and it doesn't come across like you're trying to hide anything. And I think that's what is needed. So we talk a little bit about the cowboy, right? But I don't want to miss this part. There's more to it, right? So could you share some insights maybe on your educational journey and the role that played in preparing you for being able to manage a successful ranch?
Yeah, sure. Whenever, I talked about sports a little bit. I went to a Division II college in the Panhandle of Texas to play basketball, and I really enjoyed it. And the school I went to wasn't necessarily an ag school. It really wasn't at all. And so I left my small hometown where everybody was ag and went to a place where nearly I was the only one. The cool part is that I got to learn what the average consumer thought of the ranching industry. And as I was getting my degree as well, I was really learning what these people thought or what they knew or how separated they were. I mean, I was just as separated from them as they are from ranching. And so I had to relearn to communicate or change my cowboy lingo so that it was more easily understood and received. So after I graduated from Lubbock Christian University, I went to TCU Ranch Management to really hone in my skills on managing a ranch, on being able to budget and treat it like a business, learning where to go whenever I do have problems. And I really enjoyed my time there. And the thing I think people don't take advantage of enough is the network that they're around. Just a network is so powerful, and being able to pick up a phone and call and find the right answer really fast is important in ranching. And I think it could be used really anywhere. And I just wish more people would use that. But since they don't, it gives me the opportunity to have almost an upper hand in my business. So that's another part of communication. I think it's important. And not only did I learn about ranching, but I learned I don't have to know it all. But if I know somebody who knows, that's almost just as good.
Yeah, and again, that's another tidbit from this interview that I think people will gain a lot from. It is so important, and it translates for everything. I mean, Tucker, I'm in healthcare analytics. I've been in it for 30 plus years, and what you just said there is something that I preach to my own people about knowing where to go. So yeah, that's definitely relatable, and it translates well. So looking ahead a little bit, what are your hopes for the future in regards to sustainable ranching and the role it's going to play in our society?
Yeah, that's an interesting question that a lot of us have been asking ourselves too. Looking forward, I do think for beef, I think there will be, there's a lot of ranchers really worried about traceability coming in, about knowing where these animals were raised and what rancher had that animal. And I can see why. I mean, I can see some negatives from that, but what other business in the world can sell a product and not have a number or a name on there to where you know where that product came from? And so just as far as business, I think it's smart business for the industry to know where that comes from. But that's a touchy subject for a lot of people. As far as sustainability, the ranching industry has done a really good job of listening to the consumer and selling what they want. In the lowest demand for beef was back in the 70s and 80s, a little bit of the 90s. And we found that the consumer wants quality. They want choice. They want prime beef. They want really high quality beef. And so we've changed that, and we've tripled it, the amount that we're making in a really short amount of time. And that's where that genetic progress comes in, of using that sound science and making quick changes. And I think the best is yet to come. I mean, I think we're going to be able to breed animals that are born easy, that are good mothers, that grow fast, that marble really well, that need less feed to produce more beef. And being more sustainable is good for everybody. And there is some in the ranching industry letting that tradition suppress success. And in the next 20 years is going to be the largest land transfer that the U.S. has ever known, from grandpa down to the next generation. And that's going to be a swivel point, I think, on are we going to change our ways of really learning how to improve soil health? Are we going to keep doing the same thing? And I think there are a lot of people already taking that time to learn what it means to use rotational grazing, to let the land rest, or to be able to keep animals off the land when it needs to. Because if the land's not good, the cows aren't good, the rancher doesn't make money. So for the rancher, it's better that the land is good. And that's another connection that we have with the consumer is, hey, we want the land to be good too. We want it to be sustainable. That means we stay in business. That means you eat good beef. The win-win-win.
Great segue. So coming from a guy who lives, big city, and all the consumers out here, from a rancher, what would you give as some advice for us, the consumer, to be on the lookout for? Because I don't think we really think about it when we hit our supermarket, right? A lot of chain supermarkets. I'll be honest, I know growing up, my parents, we had a butcher that was local. So we would get, and I could tell a difference between beef we got from the butcher compared to what we bought from the supermarket. But any tips or things that you think folks should look out for in the bigger cities, especially when they're buying their beef?
The good news is that the beef in the supermarket and the beef, whether you buy it local at the butcher or at the supermarket, the good news is if it is inspected, then the beef is safe. As long as it's been inspected and taken care of, we have the safest beef supply in the world. And so I do want to start with that. That's the good news. And my family eats what we produce. We also eat it from the supermarket. If I see steaks for sale, I'm buying. I like steaks as much as anybody. So that's the good news. Other thing I think to watch out for, I think a lot of it is just knowing what certain words mean. I mean, knowing the difference between select, choice, and prime beef. I mean, that's your grades of how good is this? What's the marbling inside it? How's the taste and the tenderness? So learning what those mean. And I think we like to know more now than ever about where our beef comes from, or how it was raised, or what products were used on it. And you can find that by buying a certain brand of beef, whether it's certified Angus beef or Rancher's Reserve. You can find these companies that fit your style of consumption, or whether it's really, really lean beef. I mean, that's the cool part, is we have this choice. It's just knowing what those words mean and finding the one that we really like. For me, if it's high choice or prime, I can eat all kinds of beef if it's choice or prime beef. The select I tend to stay away from, just because it tends to be a little less high quality, tends to be a little less tender. I love all beef, but if I had a choice, I'm choosing choice and prime. So I think those are the things to look out for. I don't think there's anything scary coming down the line. Some folks are worried about, shipments of beef coming in from Australia and being called United States beef, but really what that means is that it was inspected by the U.S., which is a good thing. Could we be more clear and transparent on that this came from Australia and was inspected? I think so. But that's much bigger politics than just myself can change. So do we have things to fix in the industry? I think we do. Being transparent is a good thing. But I don't think we as consumers have anything to be scared of. That's the good news.
Yeah, that is good to hear, because like you, I don't raise beef, obviously, but I love beef and steak and burgers, and I can go on.
Yeah.
So I wanted to end with this question. So I think as ranching in general, right? I think it intimately connects you with what I'll say the circle of life. I mean, basically from birth to maturity and eventually the end. Can you share maybe a personal story of a moment that, deeply moved you and highlighted the beauty and poignancy of the whole circle of life in your work?
Most of that tends to come about this time of year. Right now is our calving season. That's when the cows are having their babies. Most of the time when I feel that the biggest connection is when I'm able to save a cow and a calf. And I know that the mother's having trouble. We check them every 4 hours through the night to make sure that they don't have trouble having their babies. And if they do, we want to be there to help. Because if we didn't help, nature takes its place, and it's coyotes or wolves or something that ends that cycle, right? So we want to help that, get them to a place where we can help and see what's going on. And a lot of times in these urban areas, vets are pretty good ways away. And so that's where the phone call comes in. Hey, here's what I got. What can I do? How can I save it? And whether the calf is coming out backwards or upside down, there's things that we've been able to learn from our vets of here's what's wrong. Here's how to fix it. Let's save the cow and the calf. So those are my favorite times. I was horseback and saw a cow having trouble, and there were 2 coyotes that were around her waiting for her to lay down, but she hadn't laid down yet, thankfully. So I found her, I got her into our barn, helped turn that calf around, and with the help of my family too, we were able to get that calf to come out correctly. And that's the time where I really felt the most connected, because the cow was about to die. She was really, really stressed in birth, and just knowing that you saved that animal and that it was in a really bad spot and without your help probably wasn't going to live. That's where I've really felt the most connected.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll share this now. Tucker and I were supposed to have this interview a week ago, and there was a situation where there was a calf coming backwards, right?
Yep, that was it.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there were no coyotes involved, but this one was coming out backwards, and yeah, we had that. We had the podcast planned, and I knew I wasn't going to make it. So
yeah, I told Tucker
that the cow did,
and I'm glad that was what I wanted you to share, that everybody survived. So
yeah.
Great job on you. And also, that's a story for me to tell, right? I don't think I'll ever have a podcast again, postponed due to that reason. Right. Well, Tucker, listen, it's been really fun and an honor to speak to you. It's been interesting for me. But I think, for the audience listening, right, I think this again shows the power of social media and technology, right? We have probably couldn't be more different, 2 guys here, right? But as we're different, we're a lot alike. And I think that's something that you can all take from that. And I think through conversations, we all continue to learn about each other, and we learn about the good, the bad, and we figure things out. And Tucker, it's been great, and a lot of great things you talked about that I think are translatable. Wanted to give you an opportunity here. How can people, follow you more? And let's keep that Yellowstone spotlight shining.
Yeah. So I'm on just a handful of platforms: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And Tucker Brown RAB stands for RA Brown Ranch, but Tucker Brown RAB tends to be my handle on a lot of things. And hopefully this year is going to be the best one yet. I just made my first hire. Did we freeze a little bit?
Yeah, just go back to first year. This is going to be the best year yet. Go back to that part.
So I'm hoping this will be the best year yet. I just made my first hire. This guy's going to come in and help me really, hopefully, double down on what I'm doing. I feel like I'm going in the right direction, and starting a podcast, starting a YouTube channel, and really hoping to show more of the ranching lifestyle and the good that we do, and telling that story like I believe it should be told, and that's transparency and the truth. So Tucker Brown RAB, follow me. I love answering questions. I love, like I said, those people that are seeking the truth. That's just where I love being in conversations with. So yeah, I appreciate all the follows, and also appreciate the questions that you asked today. Really good, and get the mind rolling. And also really cool to hear those questions coming from a guy like yourself, like you said, really separated in our culture and location. So thanks for the good questions today.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. Like I said, if I really take it serious when someone's willing to give me time. So part of my job is two things I need to do. I need to do research and make sure I'm not embarrassing myself or the guest and answering good questions. But more importantly, and my dad always tells me this, ask your question, shut up and listen. So, well, listen, thank you again. And thanks everyone for listening. Please follow Tucker. Looking forward to everything you got going on and the following more. Like I said, again, thanks everyone. Really appreciate the support. Tucker, thank you. You take care.
Thanks again. Will do.
This has been the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.